Hi everyone, and welcome to Moxxie Life Coaching. I'm Michelle, and I'll be your host as we explore what life coaching is and how it can empower you to create and live your best life. We'll talk about topics ranging from our own self-defeating behaviors to getting to know our authentic selves. Together, we'll investigate a variety of self-coaching modalities and explore a wide range of topics relevant to getting the most out of the life that you are actively creating. New episodes will drop every Tuesday, so please subscribe so you don't miss out on the great hints, tips, and tricks, and generally awesome content that will help you create your best life. So welcome, and thank you for listening. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Moxxie Coaching Podcast. I hope you had a fantastic week and are ready to dig in and learn a little bit more about the tarot and what Moxxie is going to be able to do for you as you do so. Before we get started, though, I have a couple announcements. The first is that the free new course is finally up and ready to go. It launched on Friday, July 30th. And the course is called Getting to Know Yourself Better Through the Tarot and Numerology. And if you're unfamiliar with birth cards, you can think of them as the sun signs of the tarot. They provide information about who we are and our traits, our characteristics, our strengths, our weaknesses, and just provide a little bit of insight into who we are who we are at our core, who we are before basically the world influences us as a human being. So that whole nature versus nurture thing. In the course, you'll learn how to calculate your birth card, as well as the birth card of anyone for whom you have a birth date, which of course can be kind of fun to see what your friends and family and frenemies birth cards are. It's always insightful. So you'll learn how to calculate those cards, and then you'll learn the general traits of that card, the strengths, the challenges, the relationship matches that are typically positive, and the career options that often will work for someone with that birth card. The course is offered on the Moxxie Coaching website, and I will put a link in the show notes, and I hope to see you there. The second announcement is about the second course that Moxxie is getting ready to launch. This course is a paid course, but I am looking for the first go around for between 6 and 8 people who are interested in taking the course as a pilot in exchange for honest feedback. I hesitate to put any course out that hasn't been tested, and I want to make sure that especially if I'm going to charge for it, that it's a quality course and is providing value to people. So this is an announcement to say that I am looking for between 6 and 8 people to pilot the course. The course itself is designed to help us re-envision who we are and help us re-envision who we want to be. Quantum physics tells us that manifestation is real. And in this course, we'll be using the power of fun and imagination and energetic attention on what we want to write the cover of our future autobiography. The autobiography that is going to illustrate who you are, who you want to be, and what you will be in the future. Simply putting time and energy and thought into this space just jumpstarts the processes of manifestation. So the combination of energetic intent and the thoughtful creative process can't be beat. And it should be fun to boot. So join me in imagining and writing. This is super fun, super relaxed, and find out, what you want your autobiography to say when you're 90. How do you want to look back on your life and see that life? As a note, while this is called Write Your Future, there is not a lot of writing in this course, and there's absolutely no formal, creative, technical writing skill necessary. The real gift here is in the class vibe and in taking the time to ponder and consider and dream and manifest. So if you are interested in participating, you can email me at my email address in the show notes, or you can join the Moxxie coaching group on Meetup and enroll there. So I hope that this is something that you would consider participating in. I think it will be a valuable experience, and I think it'll be a lot of fun too. All right. Thanks for your patience in listening to all of my announcements. I do appreciate it. All right. So let's get into this week's podcast. There's a lot of information out there on the tarot. And like most things, some of it is high quality and some of it's not. And it can be really confusing to know who to listen to and who to tune out when you're first starting out. Um, I struggled with the idea of putting out yet another podcast that leans on the tarot. I asked myself, why, when there's so much information out there, do I need to add to it? And am I just adding to the confusion? And after some soul searching, I came to two conclusions. The first is that I believe enough in self-coaching with the tarot that I feel it's important to get the information out there, and I'm willing to risk a couple people feeling confused for a little while. And number two, the best way to learn what works for you as an individual is to try out a variety of methods and techniques, decks, spreads, all of that. Mine, other podcasters, books, and ultimately, you're going to develop your own personal reading style. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there as some context, because as we move forward, while every single podcast is not going to focus on the tarot, this is the official beginning of what I'm calling a full tarot curriculum. So if you are new to the tarot, and if you are interested in beginning here as a student and moving forward over the course of the podcast, welcome. I am welcoming you in as my students, and I'm really hoping that by doing it this way, I'm able to weed out some of the, or help you tune out some of the noise and the confusion that's out there. So I have some assumptions about who you are if you are the student that I'm looking for, or the student who's looking for me. You're probably new to the tarot. It doesn't mean that you have to be new. However, if you're not, please remember that this is for those who are new, and that you may need to open your mind to a new way of looking at things. Number 2, you are interested in personal growth and development. And clearly, you have an open mind, or you wouldn't be interested in this podcast. You might have a deck already, and you might not. You may have become completely overwhelmed trying to memorize the meaning of 78 cards and just put them away because you were so frustrated. That is not uncommon. You want to get to know your real self better, the authentic self, that person that's there when you close your eyes, that person that's not the little voice in your head. And you're interested in tapping into the subconscious and learning to be open to what intuition has to teach you. So, those are some basic assumptions that I am basing moving forward upon. So, as we move into future podcasts, we'll be exploring things more in depth. We will wrap up our conversation on the foundational parts of the tarot. And when we do that, then we'll begin exploring the cards themselves and their relationship to you, their relationship to your life, their relationships to one another. And we'll be talking about questions you can ask yourself when a particular card comes up in a reading for you. And that is the premise of the beginning of self-coaching with the tarot, that we will learn more about later, but is really a system by which you're able to learn to read organically and be able to be successful right from the beginning. So I hope you stick around. I hope that you're as excited as I am about this. And one other thing. So if you are a reader right now, please don't let this newbiness turn you away, because like I said, we are approaching it from a different perspective, and give a couple of the future podcasts a chance. So to look at them from the perspective of, with a different eye, with a different way of learning. The questions that I will provide for you to ask to the tarot will allow you as a new reader to begin reading immediately and accurately. And they're going to assist you in developing a solid foundation of your own interpretation of the cards. Now, it would be almost impossible to teach the tarot without making references to traditional meanings, and certainly we will. However, in this method, while the traditional meanings add depth, they're secondary to the meaning in your subconscious and the meaning that your intuition shows to you. Okay. Now, let's address reading preparation. Reading preparation is universal. Everyone does it, and everyone has their own way of preparing. And one way of preparing is equally as valid as the next. So if you have been listening for a while, I'm sure that you recognize that, in my opinion, there is no one single correct way to practice the tarot, any more than there's one single correct way to pray or to meditate. It's a tool. Use it in the way that works for you. The point in preparing for a reading is to take some time to, quote, land in the headspace where you can be your most open, accepting, non-judgmental, and relaxed person. So what are the things that are often done to land one in that headspace? Some people really enjoy creating or designating a specific area of their home as their reading space. Typically, they'll choose a room or an area where they won't be disturbed, or at least where they can request that they're not disturbed. And it should be a quiet space, or typically is a quiet space that feels good to them. It can be dimly lit and comforting and cozy, or it can be a huge space full of natural light and energy. It's completely your choice. It's what feels good in your gut. Literally, it can be anywhere. Some people don't really feel the need for much of a space and are comfortable just plopping down anywhere to read. I, on the other hand, have one room where I do probably 95% of my readings. And it's not that I can't or won't or don't like to do readings elsewhere. It's just that this is the space that I have in my home that feels good to me, where the energy is positive, where I'm not feeling outside pressures, and where my husband knows not to bother me. If I say, hey, I'm going to be busy doing a reading, it's like, yep, cool, out, no worries. So it's completely up to you. If you're the type of person that grew up in a crazy, chaotic household, you probably are more comfortable maybe not sequestering yourself. If you're like me, the introvert that grew up in a quiet household that needs that quiet to concentrate, then do that. Whatever works for you is perfect. Now, stuff. Like the choice of space, your choice to have specific meaningful items or absolutely nothing at all around you when you read is completely yours. Some people choose a specific desk or a table or a little corner where they can leave things that they feel support them while they're reading, almost almost like an altar space. Um, I've seen people's reading areas where there are candles and crystals and um, it could be, oh, there's this beautiful rock that they picked up on the beach and it was a particularly wonderful day and it gives them this feeling and this vibe and the peace, and they bring that in and they leave that in their reading space. Common items are candles, incense, stones, which we talked about, crystals, photographs, meaningful photographs of people. Photos are really nice as well to bring in if you're doing a reading that involves someone else, and to have a photograph of them there with you helps you tap into that energy. So some people really enjoy the ritual that they create through these designated spaces and these meaningful items. I do not have an altar or a designated table. However, I'll often light just one single candle, just as a mental reminder for my brain to shift away from random daily thoughts and shift into a more internal space. And just the act of lighting that candle with that intention and sitting down helps me land in that space. Now, I do encourage you to make your space your own, use the stuff that resonates with you, but I also will caution you about getting too dependent on them. You want to be able to read anywhere. And if you have your incense, or if you have to have your incense, or if you have to have whatever personal meaningful items with you, it's just going to limit your opportunities. And when I say you want to be able to read anywhere, I don't mean that you want to be out, you want to be able to be out in public doing readings with people all around you, or you want to be able to whip out your deck anytime you have a question. If that's something that resonates with you, absolutely go ahead and do it. But what I'm talking about is having having a couple places where you can do readings if you need them. And now that people are getting back to work in the office and those types of things, having a deck in your desk is really a nice thing because it helps you recenter. It helps you check yourself. If you're having a difficult day at work, you can check a couple cards. Take 5 minutes. It's not gonna you're not gonna get in trouble at work for taking 5 minutes and doing that. So all I'm saying is that I love the ritual myself. I do understand it, but don't become dependent on it. You also want to make sure you're staying hydrated. And I mean, I know it sounds silly. It's not like you're running a marathon, but stay hydrated because it helps your brain. And if your synapses are not firing because your brain is dehydrated, your intuition's not going to work either. Additionally, if you're hungry before a reading, or you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to do this quick reading before lunch and then I'll have lunch. My recommendation is to not read when you're hungry or when you think you're going to be hungry because it really sucks to lose the momentum of a great reading. You're in the moment, your intuition's firing left and right. Everything's coming together. You see it now because you're in the zone, right? And then your stomach starts to growl, and then you get distracted, and then you rush to write everything down so you don't forget, and it detracts from the quality of your reading. So have a snack if you need a snack. Also, don't be afraid of just telling the people in your household you don't want to be disturbed, and don't feel guilty about it. It's okay. You deserve it. A half hour to yourself is perfectly reasonable, and make sure that you take that time. And when I say you don't want to be disturbed, I'm not saying you don't want to be disturbed because you're grumpy or you're disturbed because you're being antisocial. You don't want to be disturbed for the same reason you don't want your stomach growling. Because in a good reading, you get into this flowy headspace where stuff just starts occurring to you. Things drop in from your intuition, your subconscious throws things at you. And if you are, in the middle of this thought and in the middle of this flow and somebody knocks on the door, it's gone. So use that time. Everybody is so big into self-care. Well, look at this like self-care. Look at this like a requirement for you to be happy and whole, if that's the case. More important, in my opinion, than any of the physical stuff is the state of your being before a reading. And you can have all the candles in the world and all of the crystals whipping their energy at you. And if you're unable to narrow your focus and kind of come home to yourself inside your head, the reading is likely to be frustrating and shallow. So again, do what works for you. But if you enjoy prayer, pray. If meditation helps you calm and center, spend a few minutes meditating. I don't know if any of you are out there are into yoga, but I absolutely love Adrienne Mishler from Yoga with Adrienne and Find What Feels Good. And she says you need to, quote, arrive. And that's what you need to do, spending a couple minutes in preparation for the reading. So the remainder of this episode is going to be a walkthrough of the way I prepare most of the time. Now, I'm not going to say that I don't ever just grab the cards, give a little nod, yep, yep, arriving, and do my reading. But I don't do that very often because usually when I do, I'm disappointed and I'm annoyed with myself because I just didn't take the time that it needed. And I do it because in my experience, my readings are a lot more deep and meaningful. And this is whether I'm reading for myself or someone else. Does not matter. This is the same process that I use if I am really seeking something. If I'm really, really not just a fun, hey, what's in my, what's going to happen to me today, or what do I need to know today, but a real, I need some information about this. How can I move this forward? It's not working in my life type of reading. Okay. So, number one, choose your space and your props. Number two, write your question in your journal. If you are still not sure about how to question the tarot, go back and listen to some of the previous podcasts, because they will explain to you how to pose a question that will provide you a satisfying answer. If, excuse me, if that's not working, if you don't want to dig through the previous podcasts, I apologize. I can't remember what number. I want to say 18 or 19. Then you can go to the Moxxie website under resources, and there is a tarot tab there, and there's a lot of information there about how to form a question. So you've got your space and your props. You have your question in mind and in your journal, and you're writing it in your journal because it sets that energy up. It activates that energy for analysis. Then you're going to sit in a comfortable spot, wherever it feels good to you, in whatever position feels good to you. Then you're going to pick up your cards and you're going to hold them in your hands. You're going to close your eyes and you're going to look at your third eye. And your third eye is slightly above your eyebrows and right in between. And what your third eye does is that is your intuition center. That is your third eye chakra. And it is aligned with your pineal gland in the very center of your brain. And the pineal gland is the physical structure that helps us with all of this intuition and consciousness raising. So close your eyes, look at that third eye, and just imagine it being open. And you can imagine it however you want. You can imagine it as a purple light, because that's the color of the chakra. You can imagine it as a big googly eye. It doesn't matter. But just imagine touching base with that third eye and opening it up. Then, with your eyes closed, take at least 3 deep breaths using this sequence. 4 count in, hold for 4, and 8 count out. Doing that while envisioning your opened third eye is doing 2 things. It's further opening that third eye, and it is centering you. It is putting all of your attention where you want it to go. It's focusing your attention to get ready for the reading. Next, envision yourself surrounded with white light. And the white light is a protective mechanism. The idea is to protect us from negative outside influences. And I really go back and forth on the whole white light thing, because it honestly, it just sounds very, very woo-woo. However, I will say that as an empath, if I do not use my white light, I end up sucking up everybody else's energy, and in a not happy way, usually. So it absolutely does work. Now, in my opinion, I don't think you're going to be calling in the, she-dogs of the underworld by doing a tarot reading. I absolutely do not think that. However, like I said, if you are empathic, or if it just feels right as a part of bringing you into that space, bringing you into that arrival, then by all means, ask for some white light for protection and for guidance. All right, so now you're there, you're comfortable, you have arrived, your third eye is open, you're surrounded in protective white light, and you are concentrating on your question. With your eyes closed, and you can begin to concentrate on your question with your eyes closed. And at this point, you'll need to choose whether you are going to do a traditional shuffling spread where you're flipping the cards up and looking at them, interpreting them, or if you are going to do, if you're very, very, very brand new and you're going to do an illustrator reading where you are turning your cards over face up on your desk or table or floor or whatever, and choose your cards that way. If you are going to do that, then go ahead and proceed. If you're going to do more of a traditional reading, then follow this process. And this is the process that most people migrate to after working with the cards face up for a while. So you're in your space, you have arrived, you have your question in mind, and it has been written down to put that energy out there. So keep concentrating on your question and begin to shuffle the cards. You can shuffle them any way you want. Most people don't do like that little Vegas bridge thingy because it can damage the cards. Some tarot decks aren't all that expensive, but some of them are very pricey, and you don't want to be ruining your cards. So most people shuffle overhand, like that kind of thing. While you're shuffling, you're considering your question. You're thinking about your question. You're pondering your question. You're letting it all marinate, and all of that juicy energy is getting merged between yourself and your cards. When you're satisfied that you have shuffled enough, and it can be 20 seconds or 20 minutes, it does not matter. Just shuffle until you feel you have shuffled enough. Now, definitely, if you have been playing with your cards and have them sorted into piles, or have, maybe you've got all of your cups and you're looking at all of your cups, well, then you definitely want to take more time to mix everything up before you start your reading. But once you get really started in your reading, you're going to want to focus on your card, and then you shouldn't have to shuffle for 20 minutes because your cards were mixed up well. There's nothing worse than doing a reading, laying out your cards, and thinking, I just had 2 of those cards came up in my reading yesterday. Maybe I didn't shuffle well enough, or whatever. So take your time to shuffle. Now you want to cut your deck and restack it and begin to lay out your cards. And you can lay out your cards one at a time, face up, so you can see the cards as they're being laid out, or you can lay them down face down and flip them over one at a time, reading each card separately, whatever works for you. For each card, these are the questions that you can ask as a complete beginner to the tarot, to begin to open up your intuition, to begin to open up your subconscious. So these are the questions that you can ask for each card. Number 1, how does this card make me feel? Number 2, does this card bring to mind a memory or a specific situation, and what is that situation? Does the card remind me of someone, or does it remind me of a situation? If so, what is that? And write it down. Are physical sensations experienced when you look at this card? Is there, ooh, boy, that card gave me, you know, a tight neck just looking at it. Oh my gosh, that was, no, this card that I'm seeing here in my reading is making me really uncomfortable. So what's that all about? And then what does your gut or your intuition tell you about the card? This is the hardest one, but let it flow. Whatever your intuition tells you about it, write it down, because that has some meaning for you. Your intuition and your subconscious are tied very closely together, and they support one another. And listening to that gut or that intuition or that combination of your gut and your intuition, even if there's nothing else around that's telling you that it makes sense, will eventually start to pay off. And it takes a while, but just see what happens. Just see what your gut or your intuition tells you. And again, this is my whole rationale for, or a lot of my rationale for keeping a journal and for writing down your readings, because through the writing process, we're able to open ourselves to more of a flow, an intuitive flow or a subconscious flow that we don't typically have when we're speaking. And allowing yourself to just write will bring some of the gems to the surface, and you'll be able to go back and look at something and say, oh my gosh, yeah, well that makes perfect sense, or oh bingo, I never really even thought about it that way. So it's a process of, oh, I don't even know how to explain it. The writing itself helps the intuition flow. I don't know how else to say that. So you have recorded your cards, and you have hopefully gained some insight into the situation. Hopefully you've gained some insight into at least maybe a little bit of how you're feeling about something, or maybe you are starting to realize, oh boy, maybe I need to do a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that. Just a starting point. Record everything, then make sure you go back and look at it. Because certainly there is something in terms of manifestation when we're writing things down, and when we're processing, and when we're using the cards and all of that. That's occurring regardless, but when you write it down, you're able to go back and review and see, like, okay, well, I can see that I'm learning a lot, and as I do my readings, I'm learning more of the card meanings. I'm learning more about what each individual card means for me. And you can begin to look for patterns. And what I do, and this sounds really kind of weird, but what I do on like a monthly basis is I'm such a nerd. I do a chart of how many times each different card showed up, because that's a pattern, right? If I have, a specific suit constantly coming up, if cups is coming up for me all the time, wow, okay, well, I need to be paying attention to my intuition and my feelings. If pentacles are coming up all the time, All right, well, get grounded, get practical, get back into the real world. Um, it's time to deal with the practicalities. If a specific card reoccurs, that is definitely something to pay attention to. Or if certain combinations of cards reoccur. So there is no right or wrong way, but it is a really interesting thing to do to start looking for patterns, and anywhere that there's a pattern, you're able to glean something from that. You're also able to realize where maybe you misinterpreted something the first time. It's like, oh, okay, well, I see now that, it didn't really work out that way. So maybe this card means something different to me. Or maybe I got interrupted, or um, maybe I was just wrong, because that happens sometimes too. So that is the walkthrough. I hope that for those of you who just literally don't know where to start, this is a good starting point. Future podcasts, we're going to be talking much more in detail, starting to talk about the cards, the suits, the meanings of the cards, the questions that you can ask yourself of the cards, and all of that. So I hope that this was relevant and useful information for you. And just a reminder to check out the free course on the tarot birth cards, as well as please consider being one of the pilot students for the excuse me, for the paid class on writing your future autobiography. All of the information will be available in the show notes, and I really hope to see some of you there. Lastly, if you have listened to this podcast and if you have made it all the way to the end, I have a request. And that request is that you drop me a really quick email and let me know what is working for you with the podcast and what areas you would like to see more information covered. Basically, I'm looking for some feedback here, and I want to make sure that what's being put out there for you is relevant and helpful. And if I get some feedback from you, it will be much easier for me to make sure that that's the case. All right, thank you so much. Have a fantastic week, and I will look forward to talking to you all next week. Have a great one. Bye-bye.